Corusaunt at dusk wore its most convincing mask. The Senate district floated above the city like a jeweled ship, domes and towers burnished by the dying sun, every window catching fire and calling it peace. On Padmé Amidala's balcony, the air smelled faintly of rain and ozone from passing speeders. Below, traffic braided through neon lanes with the steady patience of a river that never chose a direction, only motion. Padme stood very still in soft Naboo silks that fell like water from her shoulders. She kept her posture as carefully as a speech, chin lifted, hands folded at her waist. Composure came easily now. It had become a uniform. The hard part was the quiet after applause, the moments when the building slept and the city kept talking without her. Anakin was away. He was often away. Wars did that. They took people who loved you and returned them sharpened, too bright at the edges, humming with what they could not say. Behind her, the doors whispered open. "Senator," a servant murmured, careful as always. "Your guests are arriving." Padme inhaled, turned, and smiled the kind of smile that belonged to the Republic. Inside, the reception was marble and chandeliers and polite laughter. Neutral systems had sent delegates who feared both sides, and wanted to be seen fearing neither. Music drifted through the room, stringed and distant, as if it knew it was decoration. Conversations wore diplomatic phrases like armor, mutual aid, humanitarian corridors, shared prosperity. Words that could mean anything, and therefore meant nothing. Padme moved through it all with practiced grace. She placed a hand on an elbow here, leaned close to catch a whisper there, offered reassurance, with eyes that seemed endlessly patient. She was a symbol first, a person only when no one was watching. Then she saw her. Near the edge of the hall, where shadows pooled beside an archway, Ahsoka Tano stood with a hood pulled up against the brightness. Not hiding, exactly. More like refusing to be claimed by the room. She was in travel-worn robes that had once been practical on campaigns, and were now softened by dust and time. The lights caught the faint scarring of a life lived close to blaster fire, and the calm that followed someone who had stopped waiting for permission to breathe. Ahsoka did not look like a Jedi anymore, not in the way the Senate expected. The posture remained, though, that quiet balance that made chaos feel briefly ashamed of itself. Padme felt something shift in her chest, not a surge, not a thunderclap. A small adjustment, like a door opening without sound. Ahsoka's gaze lifted, meeting Padme's from across the room. There was recognition there, but also something else. A shared knowledge that neither of them fit cleanly into the shapes people wanted. Padme had built her shape from politics. Ahsoka had broken hers and walked out of the rubble. Padme crossed the room, not quickly, not like someone eager, like someone moving toward a necessary conversation. "Ahsoka," she said softly, and allowed warmth into the syllables. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm not officially here," Ahsoka replied. Her voice held the faintest edge of humor, the kind that kept pain from becoming a spectacle. "A friend thought it might be useful if I listened." "A friend," Padme echoed, eyebrow lifting. "I didn't know you kept any in the Senate." Ahsoka's mouth tilted. "I didn't know I kept any anywhere." Padme didn't answer with pity. Pity would have pushed Ahsoka farther into the shadows. Instead, she reached for a tray passing between them and took a glass. Then she took another and offered it. Their fingers brushed around the stem. It was nothing. Barely contact. the sort of accidental touch that happened constantly in crowded rooms, but it landed like a secret. Ahsoka's hand stilled. Padme's breath caught, then smoothed again. Somewhere beneath the music, beneath the whispers, beneath the planet's endless mechanical heartbeat, Padme felt a quiet hum. Not dramatic. Not loud. More like the memory of a song she hadn't realized she missed. Ahsoka accepted the glass. She did not step away. "Thank you," she said. Padme nodded once, as if they had exchanged nothing more than politeness. But the air had changed. The room still glittered. The marble still shone. Yet Padme felt as if she were standing in a smaller, more intimate place, contained within it. They did not talk long. Not at first. They spoke of relief routes, of shipping lanes blocked by war, of worlds that wanted peace, but couldn't afford it. Padme watched Ahsoka speak and realized how rarely anyone spoke honestly to her, without trying to gain something. Ahsoka's honesty carried no agenda. It was simply her. Later, when the reception thinned and the delegates began to drift toward departures and private meetings, Padme found Ahsoka again by the balcony doors. Coruscant's lights had deepened, turning the skyline into a field of stars arranged by human arrogance. "You don't like these rooms," Padme said, not a question. Ahsoka's gaze remained on the city. "I don't like the way people pretend they aren't afraid." Padme's laugh was quiet, surprised. "Afraid is all we are." Ahsoka glanced at her then, really looked. "You say that like you're allowed to admit it." Padme's throat tightened. She kept her smile in place. "It's a reception. I'm allowed to admit anything as long as it sounds like a metaphor." Ahsoka's expression softened, and for a moment she looked younger than the weight she carried. "You're very good at making cages look like architecture." Padme should have been offended. She was not. Instead, she felt seen, cleanly, and without cruelty. When Ahsoka finally left, slipping into the halls with her hood up and her footsteps measured, Padme remained at the balcony doors longer than necessary. She watched the last of her guests vanish into sleek speeders, watched the city pulse, and felt a strange ache that had nothing to do with politics. In the days that followed, Ahsoka's presence became a quiet thread in Padme's schedule. Not official, not announced. She appeared in corridors outside committee rooms, leaning against walls as if she belonged there even when she didn't. Sometimes Padme would catch her at the edge of a hearing, listening with an attention so sharp it felt like truth might bleed. Their conversations lengthened. They spoke in private alcoves where the walls were thick, and the staff kept their eyes politely lowered. They spoke about the war, the way people speak about storms, with resignation and a stubborn hope that it might pass without taking everything. Ahsoka told Padme about leaving the Order without turning it into a tragedy. She described it as a decision, not a wound. Padme admired that. She envied it. "I don't know where I belong anymore," Ahsoka admitted once, voice low in a quiet antechamber, lined with statues of old senators. Padme's reply came before she could soften it. "Then perhaps you're freer than the rest of us." The words hung between them, too honest for the hallway. Ahsoka stared at Padme like she'd been struck. Not hurt. Recognized. Padme felt her own chest tighten, and for a moment the statues seemed to watch with stone patience, as if they'd seen this story repeat in different costumes across different centuries. They should have stopped then. They should have let the moment pass and returned to safer subjects. They did not. Padme invited Ahsoka to Naboo under the careful banner of relief efforts and diplomatic consultations. It was plausible. It was appropriate. It was also a lie, wearing formal clothing. Naboo greeted them with green and water and air that did not taste like metal. The lakes were calm, reflecting the sky as if the planet insisted on beauty, even while the galaxy burned. Padme's palace felt quieter than she remembered, its corridors wide enough to swallow footsteps and secrets alike. They walked the gardens in the early morning, dew clinging to leaves like tiny offerings. They spoke without hurry. Sometimes they did not speak at all. There were moments when their shoulders nearly touched as they leaned over a pond, watching fish glide beneath lilies. Moments when Padme's hand lifted toward Ahsoka's sleeve and then dropped, as if remembering the world. In the evenings, rain sometimes tapped the tall glass windows like a patient request. During one such storm, they sat in a sitting room, with the lights dimmed and the fire low. The palace staff kept far away, respectful of the senator's solitude. Ahsoka watched the rain for a long time before she spoke. "You're lonely," she said. Padme did not deny it. Denial had become useless between them. She stared into her glass, as if the surface might offer an answer. "I'm surrounded," she said carefully. "Always surrounded. People wanting something. People needing something. And when he comes home, he's bright. Too bright. Like the war follows him into the room." Ahsoka's voice was gentle. "Anakin loves you." "I know." Padme's fingers tightened around the glass. "And I love him. But his love is a storm that thinks it's shelter. If I step away from it, even to breathe, it thinks I'm leaving." Ahsoka did not speak poorly of him. She didn't need to. The truth was heavy enough on its own. Padme's gaze lifted, and there was a rawness there she never allowed the Senate to see. "Do you know what it's like," she whispered, "to be a symbol before you're allowed to be a person?" Ahsoka's eyes softened. "Yes." Padme's breath hitched, because that single word contained more understanding than a lifetime of careful compliments. Without planning it, Padme reached out. Her hand hovered above Ahsoka's on the arm of the chair, trembling slightly, as if waiting for permission from a universe that never granted it. Then she let her fingers settle over Ahsoka's. It was barely pressure, barely contact. It could have been comfort. It could have been nothing. It was everything. Ahsoka did not pull away. Her thumb shifted, a small motion, and her hand turned under Padme's, as if accepting not just touch, but choice. The kiss came later, when the rain thickened and the room felt like an island. It was hesitant, almost misaligned, like they were both afraid of what their bodies already knew. Padme leaned in as if stepping off a ledge. Ahsoka met her with a softness that felt like a promise not to demand more than Padme could give. When it ended, neither of them spoke. Silence did the work. Words couldn't. It named the line they had crossed. It acknowledged the cost. Back on Corusaunt, the world noticed patterns the way predators notice weakness. A senator with sharp ambitions and sharper eyes began to watch. He saw Ahsoka's presence near Padme too often. He saw the former Jedi slip through halls that should have been closed to her. He saw Padme's smile change in small, private ways when Ahsoka entered a room. Whispers followed. Why was the former Padawan always near the senator from Naboo? Why was Senator Skywalker absent so often? Why did Ahsoka no longer return to the temple? Why did she look like someone who had chosen a different loyalty? The Jedi Council's wariness arrived quietly. through polite inquiries and careful invitations. They were not concerned about romance in the way the Senate imagined. They were concerned about attachment. They were concerned about Anakin. They were concerned about anything that might pull him tighter toward fear. Padme felt the pressure begin to tighten around her, like an invisible net. Then Anakin returned. He arrived without warning, his presence filling the apartment like heat. He looked exhausted and triumphant and haunted, eyes too bright, smile too eager. Padme went to him, kissed him, held him, and tried to stitch herself back into the life she was supposed to have. But she was not the same person he had left. That evening, he stepped onto the balcony and found Padme and Ahsoka there, laughter low between them like a shared secret. They were not touching. Their bodies were careful, but the space between them was intimate in a way Anakin felt before he understood. His face tightened. Jealousy sparked, hot and immediate, and Padme saw the flicker of something darker beneath it. Fear. Later, he cornered Ahsoka in a quiet corridor, away from staff and cameras. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, voice low, controlled with effort. Ahsoka didn't flinch. "Helping." "You're helping," he echoed, bitter. "Or you're taking what isn't yours." Ahsoka's eyes held his steadily. "Padme isn't anyone's." Anakin's jaw clenched. "Don't talk about her like you know her better than I do." "I'm not trying to," Ahsoka said, and there was pain there, but also resolve. "I'm saying she deserves to be seen as more than a symbol, even by you." Anakin recoiled as if struck. The words sounded like accusation, because his guilt was always looking for a place to land. "You think I don't see her," he hissed. "I would burn the galaxy to keep her safe." Ahsoka's voice went softer. "That's not safety. That's possession." Anakin's eyes flashed, and for a moment, Ahsoka saw the edge of what he might become if love kept turning into fear. Then he turned away, fists tight, walking like someone carrying too much power and nowhere safe to put it. The political knife fell soon after. The ambitious senator leaked a rumor with the careful vagueness that made lies difficult to disprove. Impropriety, questionable associations, a former Jedi influencing policy, a married senator behaving in ways unbecoming of a public figure. A formal inquiry opened with the veneer of concern for ethics. Padme read the notice with steady hands and felt the room tilt. The stakes were not only her career, they were her future, her family, the children she carried like a secret sunrise beneath her ribs. If she was judged unstable, unfit, immoral, they could use it to take everything from her. They could use it to isolate her, to weaken her, to make her obedient. Padme understood then that love could be weaponized without ever being named. Ahsoka understood it too. That was why she left. No dramatic goodbye. No stolen meeting in a hangar. No last kiss framed by tragedy. Just absence. Padme learned from a servant, spoken softly as if the words were fragile. "The visitor has departed, Senator. She left a message that she did not wish to disturb you." Padme's throat closed. She nodded as if it were a routine update. Then she dismissed the staff and stood alone in a room that suddenly felt too large, the ceilings too high, the air too thin. A message arrived later, brief and quiet. "I won't be the reason they take anything from you." Padme pressed the datapad to her chest and wept without sound, as if grief itself might be overheard and used against her. Anakin sensed the shift and tried to pull her close, to anchor her with intensity. He begged her to stay, to trust him, to let him fix what he couldn't name. He was desperate, not cruel. His desperation was its own kind of trap, because Padme could see how fragile he was beneath the power. She could see how fear lived in him like a second heartbeat. The hearing was brutal in the way polite institutions were brutal, with smiles and insinuations and questions framed as concern. Padme walked the razor's edge with dignity. She refused to denounce Ahsoka. She refused to confess anything. She let them have nothing but her composure. In private, she broke. A senior colleague offered her a solution in a quiet office, voice sympathetic and eyes calculating. Distance yourself. Reaffirm your marriage. Avoid questionable associations. Sign a statement. Let the matter disappear. Padme stared at the document for a long time. It was short. It asked for almost nothing. A few words that implied she had been misguided, briefly influenced, now corrected. Safety in exchange for silence. She signed. The stylus felt heavy. The ink looked like a bruise. Afterward, she sat alone and realized she had chosen the Republic over herself, and the Republic did not even notice. It simply continued, hungry and indifferent. Time passed the way it always did in war, with sudden leaps and slow wounds. The conflict drew toward its end, but the air on Corusaunt grew heavier, as if the planet itself sensed a change coming. Anakin grew darker at the edges, returning with stories he did not tell fully, eyes shadowed by choices he thought he was making for love. Padme's pregnancy became visible. People congratulated her with careful delight. They spoke of hope and legacy. She smiled and thanked them, and felt as if she were watching her own life from a distance. Then a message arrived. Quiet. Unmarked. Ahsoka was on Coruscant briefly. No expectations, just an offer to meet. Public place. Safe. Padme's hands trembled as she read it. Not from fear of scandal, though that fear still lived in her like a scar. From something more tender. The possibility of honesty. The cafe overlooked the lower levels, far from Senate glitter. Its lighting was dim, its tables worn, its patrons quiet. The kind of place where people went to disappear in plain sight. Padme entered with her hood up, heart beating too loud. She scanned the room and found Ahsoka seated alone, hands folded around a cup, gaze unfocused as if listening to something deeper than sound. Ahsoka looked different. Stronger, yes, but also detached, as if she had learned to carry longing without letting it pull her off balance. Padme approached and stopped beside the table. Ahsoka looked up. For a moment, neither moved. The galaxy held its breath in the space between them. Padme sat. They spoke carefully at first, polite, measured. They asked about relief routes, about outer systems, about anything that was not the shape of their absence. Then the careful words ran out. Padme's voice cracked softly. I chose the Republic over myself. Ahsoka's eyes did not blame. You chose survival. Padme swallowed. It didn't feel like living. Ahsoka's hand shifted on the table, palm open but not reaching, an offering without demand. I left because I wouldn't be the reason they took anything from you. They still took something, Padme whispered. They took the part of me that believed I could be honest. Ahsoka's expression flickered, vulnerability slipping through the armor of distance. You can be honest now. Padme laughed without humor. Can I? With my marriage, with my children, with him. Ahsoka's voice stayed steady. I'm not asking you to burn your life down. I'm asking you to choose it. Padme stared at her, breath shallow. Ahsoka leaned forward slightly, eyes bright with a courage that did not try to own anything. Leave with me, she said, simple as truth. Not in hiding, not in shame. Just leave. Choose a life that is yours. The hum came again, soft beneath Padme's skin. Not fireworks, not prophecy. Just the quiet insistence of something real. Padme's gaze drifted to the cafe door. Beyond it, Corusaunt roared. Duty waited. Anakin waited. History waited, heavy with momentum and sharp edges. Padme looked back. Ahsoka held her gaze, uncertain now. The bravery still there, but no longer untouchable. Waiting without forcing. Padme's eyes softened. This time she did not look away. And in that held silence, in that unbroken line between them, the story did not declare an ending. It offered a choice.